Our project explores early modern conversion rhetoric. Specifically, we focus on the Virginia Company of London, which was chartered to establish New World colonies and was pivotal in producing religious propaganda for the English public. Outwardly, the company claimed that converting indigenous peoples was the most righteous way to make a spiritual material profit. Internally, however, the company was divided on the merit of converting the Powhatans. Ultimately, we aimed to track the language of the Virginia Company as it debated the efficacy of missionary work in its colonies.
Our methodology consists of a workflow that makes use of multiple resources. First of all, text cleaning. We get our texts and early modern documents from early print. However, their texts do not have punctuations, which will be a problem for chunking later. We therefore use this punctuation model to add punctuation to these texts. Moving on, MacBird is a BERT-based model that helps us perform word embedding. Cautions must be taken when using MacBird because it's highly reliant on the context words.
To match our computational outputs with the specific authors and texts, we also built a Python architecture tool that helps us to organize the metadata of all the texts and prints. This architecture will include a text title, author, publication year, the publisher, and other information, and integrate that into a searchable library. This way, as we receive data points and results throughout our entire research process, we can easily trace and cluster different texts and authors together using this metadata.
The process of closely reading texts written by key figures within the Virginia Company, such as John Donne, Patrick Copland, John Brinsley, and Edward Waterhouse, provides a strong basis for our computational work. We selected the category pair labels and projection keywords we ultimately tested based off visits to the archives, literature reviews, and historical research. Throughout our research, we kept the following questions in mind. What did these authors think of the colony of Virginia or of the colonial project at large? What kind of profit, spiritual or material, did these authors desire from the Virginia colonies? Finally, what terms and categories did the authors within our corpus use to think of Native peoples and the efforts to convert Native peoples?
Based on the close reading result, we focus our attention on several keywords to investigate their connotations such as profit, Virginia, and Native. With the word vectors obtained from using MacBird, we constructed bias axis and used vector projections onto the bias axis to find the connotations of the words. Moving on, we perform k-means clustering and time series analysis to track the composition of texts from each time frame in terms of the proportion of different clusters over time.
In addition, using the same keywords and categories, we performed cosine similarity research to study the versatility of individual words. This is determined by finding the top 40 similar words for each category in each text and seeing which one of these words appeared under multiple categories or authors. The more categories a word appeared in, the more meanings and rhetorical functions that people in this time period associated with this word. Using our metadata architecture, we can associate these different meanings and language functionalities with their respective authors. Because a word could appear under multiple categories under one text, we implemented a multi-graph format to represent this network. As for our research results, with the language network that consists of 4 authors whom we focused on, the 4 most versatile words were people, Virginia, plantation, and proceedings. By tracing back to the places in which these words were used, we found out that many of the frequently appearing words were used as rhetorical devices to advance certain agenda within or surrounding the Virginia Company literature. For example, the word martyr appeared in 8 different categories. Some authors, such as Edward Waterhouse, used this word to appeal to readers' empathy for a deceased English settler, while John Donne, the English poet, preferred to use this word in a more literal and religious sense.
Another part of our finding is clustering and time series. Here we see 2 examples of using projection clustering and time series analysis. By focusing on 3 key figures relevant to the Virginia Company and investigating their usage of the word Virginia, we found out that Waterhouse is more willing to associate the word Virginia with financial gain, whereas Copland and Donne are relatively more willing to associate Virginia with spiritual gain. This aligns with the close reading results. Based on the clustering results, we can perform time series analysis by taking cross-sections of time. This graph shows the changes of attitudes towards the word native over time. We can see that the percentage of written work that associates natives more with civility actually increases over time, and there can be multiple hypotheses to explain this. One of them is that Virginia Company is softening its tone when describing the native people, and another hypothesis is that the authors are describing the indigenous people using more pejorative terms, such as barbarian or savage, while leaving the word native to a more neutral settings. In conclusion, this is a project with 2 prompt aims and objectives. For the historical facts, we managed to advance the linguistic research and into the historical topics. And for the methodological fact, we are able to advance a highly scalable and replicable methodology in digital humanity research that can be replicated in other subject domains. We tested out cosine similarity and language networks, and we pioneered the bias axis projection and time series analysis approach.